Hey everybody, I wanted to make a quick video today, not quick. I want to make a video today to talk about mental health and anxiety and my own struggle and experience with it over the last year to year and a half or so. So the main reason I wanted to make this video was to keep normalizing the conversation around mental health. I think for me, one of the most helpful things has been talking to friends, hearing their stories, and realizing that I'm not alone in these experiences. And also, it's not weird or bad to experience anxiety. So in this video, I'm just gonna kind of share my story and also all the different things I tried to learn how to manage my anxiety and where I'm at today. So I figured it would help if we went straight to the start when I noticed like my first symptoms of anxiety. For me, it happened last year in February. I was grabbing lunch with a friend, and while we were waiting in line, I just noticed the world around me zoned out. I don't have a better way of explaining it. What happened was my vision got blurry. I was looking at my hands, and it felt like my hands weren't my own hands, and my hearing got kind of muffled too. It freaked me out, so I decided to go to urgent care and get my vitals checked out, make sure I was fine. Vitals came back totally fine. Still wasn't convinced, so I had them draw a blood panel as well, and the blood panel came back fine too. So I just chalked it up as like a one-off thing and didn't put much thought to it and just kind of kept living my life. All right, so later on last year, it was probably around November or so, I remember having my first pretty bad panic attack. So it'd been a fairly stressful period at work. I'd been working a lot of hours, and while at work, I noticed that my left pinky went numb. It probably was just some kind of a nerve that I tweaked that caused my pinky to go numb, but I instantly went into this like emotionally heightened state, and I was just very cognizant and observant of the numbness in my pinky. So I decided to go home right away, and once I got home, my left ear started ringing too, and that's when like the panic hit. So there was just like a wave that went through my body, and my heart started pounding, and I got intensely worried about the fact that I was gonna die. I was convinced I had a heart attack. I was convinced I had a brain tumor, and like, even though those are very irrational thoughts, there was nothing that I could do to convince myself otherwise in the moment. And I think that's one of the like scariest things with panic attacks. You're no longer in control of your thoughts in the moment. It's just like full on survival instinct that kicks in. It took like 30 minutes or so before that moment finally passed. So yeah, at that time already, I noticed that there were these things happening to me, but I still never took action to do anything to change anything. Fast forward to this year, all of that kind of came crashing down. So February 17th, 2020, yes, I still remember the day. It was President's Day, and I had just finished playing tennis with a friend, and after tennis, I grabbed coffee with another friend. So while I was at coffee, I was looking at my friend's laptop screen, and all of a sudden the world started spinning, and the exact same thing happened again. I had another panic attack, and I also got worried about my health. I got worried that I was dying, I had a heart attack, all these things started going through my head again. So again, of course, I went to urgent care, did the same thing that I did last year, got my vitals checked again, got a blood panel done again. This time blood panel came back and said my vitamin D was low, but that was just kind of a random thing. The week that followed that was one of the worst weeks I've experienced in life thus far. So for the whole week after that, I was in this constant mental fog. I don't even remember that time period super well anymore. My eyes were constantly tired. The first experience I mentioned where it felt like everything zoned out, it was that same sensation, but instead of passing, that zone out feeling was with me for the entire week. So it felt like I didn't recognize my hands, I didn't recognize myself, I didn't really know anything anymore. Oh, and there were bodily tingles everywhere, numbness. So the really annoying thing that I had with my anxiety was I think I had some kind of trigger related to health. The worse the anxiety got, the more I had these physical symptoms that would make the anxiety even worse. That is not a fun place to be. I noticed that I started questioning everything from like, how do I know how to form words to what if I completely forget how to speak right now, to what is like the point of life anyway? Where does life come from? Why do we exist? And I've had questions like this in the past before, and I've thought about them too, but they never terrified me the way that they did during that week. I distinctly remember my girlfriend and I, we went to this boba shop, and it was supposed to help cheer me up. We were playing this card game, and in the card game you have to do some like basic addition, but even addition for me was too much at the time. And I remember I started crying because adding was such a challenge. Looking back now, I can't really even believe it anymore, but that is something that I genuinely felt in the moment at the time. So after that super tough week, at some point I decided, okay, I gotta just pick myself up. I gotta try things, I gotta change things. Obviously, if I don't do anything, I'm just gonna be stuck in this state. So even though things were still feeling really bad, I went all mad scientist mode on trying to fix myself. I'm this very cause and effect kind of person, or I was at least, so I believe that I was experiencing anxiety because of something that I had neglected. So whether it was sleep, diet, exercise, I didn't know which one it was at the time, but I was convinced that if I addressed those things, I would fix the anxiety as well. So I went really, really deep into diet for the first couple weeks after. I read this book, Heal Your Drained Brain, that talks about all the things that you should and shouldn't be eating, all the things that you should buy organic. And I was convinced that, hey, maybe it was the omega-3s that were missing. So I got a lot of salmon, and I ate a lot of salmon for that whole week after, in addition to improving on sleep, exercising more, and starting a meditation practice. And lo and behold, 2 weeks later, actually, I did start feeling better. I noticed that my mental function was returning a little bit, and at least the anxiety wasn't constant. So I would still have periods of maybe like 4 or 5 hours of anxiety a day, but I started noticing these points where the anxiety would cut off, and I felt like I had made a lot of progress there. So unfortunately though, after I started noticing I felt better, I stopped doing all the things that made me feel better in the first place. I stopped eating healthily, and then less than like a week after, the anxiety came back way, way worse than before. The first time around, I was convinced I could fix it. The second time around, I tried to do all the things that fixed it in the first place, but this time they did nothing. So exercise, eating, meditation, was hoping that I would make things better, but this time around, the anxiety just stuck around. And yeah, all the like numbness, I started getting headaches, tired eyes, all of that came roaring back. At some point I started feeling really hopeless. I was worried that I would never be able to manage my anxiety, it would never go away, and I also started asking, like, was I ever not anxious in the first place? So that week that the week that I thought I started feeling better, was I actually anxious that week, but I didn't know? So this is one of the really tricky things about anxiety. For those of you who have seen that duck and rabbit photo, if not, here it is. Most people see a duck right away, or most people see a rabbit right away. And that's kind of how anxiety is. When you aren't feeling anxious, you see a rabbit, or you don't recognize how you could have seen anxiety ever or felt anxiety ever. And it feels like it was so easy to just like turn off anxiety. But when you're in an anxious state, all you can see is a duck. You can't understand how there's a rabbit, or even if there is a rabbit. You just start feeling like you were never not anxious in the first place. And that's one of the most annoying things about anxiety. It sets this like fog over your mind that makes you question everything that you think you know. And that is not a fun thing to go through. So for me, at some point, I was just more excited to fall asleep every day than do anything else, because at least I would get like a temporary break from my conscious mind worrying about everything all the time. Unfortunately, at some point, even sleep became a struggle, and I would wake up every night in cold sweats, couldn't really sleep very well, which would again fuel the anxiety even more. So yeah, at this point I'm feeling super hopeless, and I figure I have to like keep trying and keep doing things. So I lean into meditation super heavily. I'm actually on day 110 now of meditation in a row, so feeling good about that. Within meditation, I started taking more in around mindfulness and the importance of mindfulness and slowing down and being present in the moment. I realized that you can be mindful of your thoughts and you don't have to attach to them. I learned that you can actually watch and observe these thoughts flowing by. So if you have a thought like, I have a brain tumor in my head, you can actually observe your brain having that thought without attaching it to what you believe. Would recommend doing the Headspace Anxiety course if you want to hear more about that. This is probably the most important thing. You're not going to get rid of or fix your anxiety. And while that is a very shitty thing to accept and feels extremely uncomfortable, coming to terms with that was the thing that helped me, I think, learn how to manage my anxiety a bit better. So anxiety is not a bad thing in itself, but by labeling it and judging it in a negative way, we start to find that, hey, it does become this like negative influence on our life. But if we learn to like reframe that relationship and realize that, hey, anxiety is uncomfortable, but it's just a part of the human experience, it actually becomes a lot easier to accept and live with. I don't know why I was finally able to realize that fact, but it wasn't something that happened in my conscious mind, which is one of the like really odd things for me. It seems like it happened on like a deeper part of my psyche. I actually remember I was sitting at my girlfriend's family's house eating dinner, and while I was sitting there, I was just thinking, so this is how it's supposed to feel like, and it's not something I overcome. I think I've always been this person that tries to like will my way through everything. With all the things that I tried at the beginning, I just believed that, hey, if I did all these things, then eventually I would get rid of the anxiety. But while I was at dinner, I kind of realized that, hey, that's just not going to happen. It's just going to be a part of me, but I need to learn to be okay with the fact that it's a part of me. Ironically, though, once I had that thought, it felt like anxiety no longer had control over me. So it's this weird paradox of when you give up control, you actually end up taking back control. The moment I stopped trying to control my anxiety and fight it, the moment I just let it take over is actually the moment that I felt like I was back in control. And yeah, from that point forth, it just felt like the anxiety just kind of simmered down a little bit. That's pretty much all I've got. I know this was a pretty long video, so if you've made it this far, thanks so much for listening to my story. I really appreciate it, and reach out to me if you have any questions about my experiences. If you need any support right now, I'm more than happy to help and more than happy to chat. All right, thanks so much.